Did you miss us? It's time for the Cantina Cast After Dark.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Cantina Cast After Dark, our series of episodes dedicated to bringing you interviews, insights, and intel from the Star Wars creator content makers themselves. I'm Albert Padilla, and first up, joining me today is, as always, our very own Chris Jonesy Jones. Jonesy, how are you doing today, sir?
Doing fantastic, man. This is an exciting, something long in the making, so it's really cool for finally to make this happen, make this work out.
Absolutely. And our guest today is the author of a number of novels, including tie-ins for Elementary, Stranger Things, and of course Star Wars. He's written for the Star Wars Adventure comic series and from both of the anthology books from a certain point of view. And he recently gave us this fantastic, Josie's going to hold this copy up, this fantastic Goldsboro version, which I've not gotten mine yet, by the way. I'm still bitter about that. But he's given us this new novel called Shadow of the Sith. Please welcome to the show, the Shadow of the Sith himself, the New York Times bestseller, author Adam Christopher. Adam, welcome to the show, sir.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, how does that feel?
How does that feel? Yeah, when you get to be introduced as a New York Times bestseller, that's incredible.
That is like, that's like a dream, really. I tell you, the way it works, it comes out at like 5 p.m. on the Wednesday, the week after the book came out. So that whole day, I was like just a nervous wreck. Couldn't do anything.
Is that 5 p.m. Your time, or is that 5 p.m. over here?
Your time. So UK time is 10 p.m.
Oh crap! Yeah, you gotta wait all night.
It's like I can't go to bed yet because I could. Yeah. So, but yeah, no, that was good. I'm honored to be able to have done a Star Wars story that people liked.
Well, congratulations on the success. I know we met up at Celebration. First off, thank you for coming by the show that we did with Claudia Gray and talking about the High Republic. But afterwards, I went out there and I was talking to you and I said, hey, you did a really good job. I said, this book's going to be huge. And I remember the look on your face. Like, I don't know if it was, I think it was more about, I don't know, what was going through your mind? Because you were getting that feedback from a lot of people and there was almost kind of a sense of surprise, which I thought was kind of crazy, given how good the book was.
This is the thing, though. Like, you write anything. I know you've got your editor and all this agent and all that, but like writing is a solitary job. Like you're in your office and you're typing for how many hours it takes to do a book.
Mm-hmm.
Months, weeks and months. So you'd never really know. It's like, it seemed okay. I thought the book was pretty good. And then I remember the first excerpt was released, which was the scene of Luke as a vision of Exegol, and then he's sort of rescued by the Force spirit of Anakin Skywalker. And that was my first inkling that something was happening because people kind of lost it when they read that excerpt.
You talk about a hell of a way to introduce people to the novel, right?
Well, it was really a good choice on that part. And then I went to Star Wars Celebration. Of course, that was May.
Yeah.
The book didn't come out until June. So I was like, well, what's going to happen? Like, I'm going to be signing posters. Who's going to come to a poster signing? Turned out quite a lot of people, actually. And I spent the whole time walking around, people coming up to me and taking selfies and asking for autographs, which is amazing.
Yeah.
But also it's like, what is happening? Something's happening. So, like I said, I was probably a bit shocked whenever you saw me, and kind of nervous. It was good though. I enjoyed it, and I'm glad that people were excited because like that's the point.
Yeah.
I could understand a bit of that trepidation too. The fandom could be a bit particular sometimes, so you can understand. Yeah, you can definitely understand that nervousness going into it. You talk about a book that really helps and really enhances, got a huge chunk of the saga. It's an incredible way to get familiar with some of the things that maybe we felt a little bit lost on, especially when we get into the sequel trilogy. So it's just a really cool way to introduce people to a timeline we know, but to characters in different moments in their lives that we haven't had, that we've wanted for a long time, but finally get to see them in an official piece of work.
Yeah, and I would say there's 3 books that come to mind. Shadow's just being one of them, honestly, but 2 other books that come to mind in terms of the cinematic qualities that come with them. Heir to the Empire is always up there for me. And more recently, The Rising Storm by Cavan Scott. And I felt like this one, and I know you've mentioned this in other interviews as well, but you kind of went in with that kind of approach, right? You went in with this, I want to tell the cinematic story.
Yeah.
And what was that process like for you? Because I imagine you had to be like channeling some of the movies and Heir to the Empire series and a number of other great books that were written prior to this.
Oh yeah. So I really wanted to do this as episode 6.5 because it was it's set right in the middle of that period where between Return of the Jedi and that's episode 6, and then Force Awakens is episode 7. It's this huge time period, both in our world and in the Star Wars universe. So I knew I had the opportunity to kind of do a really big, epic story. And like I'm a Star Wars fan first and foremost, so I thought, what are people gonna want to read? What would I want to read?
Yeah.
If this is an important book detailing an adventure that Luke and Lando had, and like there's not been a Luke book since like 2015, so I knew people were like dying for a Luke Skywalker book. So there was kind of the weight of responsibility of like, let's make a really good story, but also let's make a really big story. So yeah, like this is the movie. This is the unseen movie. So it's very visual. I mean, Star Wars is very visual anyway. So it's like make it big and bold and epic and have everything in there that I would want to see if I was watching it or if I was reading it.
Yep.
Which is why it's quite big. It's like 500 pages.
And one of the interesting parts about it is that the cast is relatively small. So it's still, for as big as it is in the epicness of it, it's still very much a personal story and a very tight story within a confine of just a half dozen characters or so that have a lot of meaning to them. And there's not a lot of waste in all of that too. So the story just keeps moving and moving and moving at a really great pace.
Yeah, which is good because it's so long that you can actually get that kind of momentum going.
Yeah, that could be tough to sustain the whole way. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it helps because I knew from the beginning also it was going to be basically two stories. There's Dathan and Miramir and Rey escaping Ochi. There's Luke and Lando who are chasing Ochi, but also they're kind of dealing with their own storyline as well. And they do intersect at times when they have to. So I think that kind of helped as well because you kind of can keep the pace up in both. And you talk about a small cast of characters. It's like, yeah, so really focusing on these groups. There's sort of, I guess, sort of three, maybe there's four groupings because there's Luke and Lando and their journey. There's Dathan and Miramir, but then we get a lot of Ochi's point of view as well.
Yeah.
And then Kaiser and the Sith. So there's these kind of four different groups, and they all want something, mostly to get to Exegol.
Well, we're going to get back into the book here. I just want to ask you just quickly. I know you mentioned at the very beginning you are a Star Wars fan, and I have no doubt in hearing everything you've talked about, and you're clearly by the amount of toys on display behind you. But I do want to ask you, like, so where did your Star Wars story begin? What was it that got you into Star Wars? How were you introduced into the franchise? And what's it meant for you in your personal life? I would imagine quite a bit now, given that you were a New York Times bestseller. But
yeah, so like I can actually say the first movie I ever saw was A New Hope, and it was I was 6 months old, and it was August 1978 in New Zealand because my dad is a big science fiction fan, and he really wanted to go and see it. So like, it's a really bad idea to take a 6-month-old to a movie like Star Wars. And I know this is not the original release because there was 77, but I think like it was kind of different in those days. Movies would come, they'd come, and then they'd go, and then they'd have like a repeat season. So this is, I've worked it out to be, I think August 78 it came back in New Zealand. So that was my first movie. And then my dad worked in advertising, which meant he did business trips to like Hong Kong and Japan and Taiwan. And this is early to mid 80s now. And like he'd come back with toys that were not available in New Zealand. Either they came out later or they didn't come out at all. So I had this kind of really epically privileged 80s childhood where I had toys that my friends didn't have.
Yeah.
And I would watch, like my favorite movie was Empire Strikes Back. And we got into this thing where my dad could borrow a video machine from work because it was TV advertising. And they had all these VHS machines. So borrow a VHS on a Friday night, stop off at the video rental place on the way home to pick up Empire Strikes Back. And then I'd watch it 6 times over the weekend.
Yep.
And like just repeat. And there's no point taking me to the video store to choose something else because I always picked Empire Strikes Back. So he just ended up just picking up on the way home.
Yep.
Which sounds like what a sad childhood I was indoors watching Empire Strikes Back and playing with my action figures. And then 40 years later, I'm a New York Times bestselling Star Wars author.
Still playing with his action figures.
Still playing with my action figures and sitting inside watching Empire Strikes Back.
Yep.
This is like what I do.
It's so funny you mentioned that. I have a similar story. I didn't see it. I tell people I saw it when it first came out, but I, like you, caught it when it was months, almost a year later in '78 is when I finally saw it.
Right.
As a 5-year-old. And same kind of thing. It's not probably not the best thing. I actually saw it at a drive-in theater, so the sound wasn't very good, but I had a massive screen in front of me the entire time. But yeah. Certainly influential in that regard.
Maybe we'll move back into the book here. So the fandom you have and is clear with all of the Easter eggs and the references, anything from the comic strips to video games, there's action figures. But the really cool thing is you weave them all into the story in a very natural way that for folks like Albert and myself, we pick up on those and those are really exciting, but it doesn't take away from the story at all. But using all of those really helped to enhance that the sequel or the prequel and the original versions of the movie or trilogies. How important was it for you to really bring in those references? Was it more of a fun activity, or was it, no, they have to be meaningful in a way that they fit in and they do have a kind of an undertone to it if they're not completely overt important to the story?
Yeah, they were important because, I mean, like you say, they were kind of organic and natural in the way that they incorporated in the story, whether it's, comics, video games, books, TV, movies. So the thing I love about Star Wars is that it's one big story from, I mean, if you look at the current canon, it's like from the High Republic through to the end of the Rise of Skywalker, however long that period is, it's one story of Star Wars. So it just was obvious to kind of link things together. And it wasn't like I had a checklist of like, okay, I'm going to have a video game character, I'm going to have a comic character. It's like, well, yeah, this is kind of spoilers, but like, Lando talks to Shriv from the video games because of course he does, because Shriv is his good contact in the New Republic.
Yep.
Comat is exactly the kind of person who would have a Targon from the High Republic, like living on this irradiated planet.
Yeah, that was such a great reference. I did not see that one coming at all.
Yeah. Things like the Cap 2, which was this weird toy. Yeah, so like never appeared in, like they tried to say it was an Empire Strikes Back, and of course it never appeared on screen at all. And like if you look at the box, it's like kind of stupid. But like, how do I describe that in a way that is not just stupid? So the bounty hunters have a Cap 2, but again, like they were going to have some kind of machine. They had some kind of little walker that they could capture people. So like, of course, it's a Cap 2.
Yeah.
Everything that I mean, I'm not saying it's not fun to put this stuff in. Absolutely, it's fun. Lando orders red dwarfs from bar. Well, that's from the 1978 Los Angeles Times newspaper strip because I had read the newspaper strips and I thought that was really cool. And then it came to the stage where, well, Lando's going to order some drinks. Oh, he'll order some red dwarfs.
Yeah, of course.
So again, it's like, if these are things that you recognize as a Star Wars fan and you get a little kick out of it, that's awesome. But also it's really important with any tie-in work or any licensed fiction is that it really doesn't matter. Like, if you are a Star Wars fan, you walk into a bookstore and you see the book on the shelf and it's got Luke Skywalker on the front with a green lightsaber and it says Star Wars, and you think, I love Star Wars, I love Luke Skywalker, I'm going to read this book. You can pick it up and read it and it's going to be fine, it's going to make sense. If then that spurs you to go and look up Aftermath Trilogy or Dark Legends or whatever, that's awesome and you get more out of it. If you don't get the references and Easter eggs, it doesn't matter. Like, it's still a story. Yep. Even though it kind of links into The Rise of Skywalker, like, even if you haven't watched that since 2019, like, there's still a story that you can follow. And to me, that's the best kind of tie-in or licensed fiction. It's like, I love Star Wars, I love Doctor Who, World of Warcraft, whatever it is, you can grab it and read it and enjoy it for what it is. Having said that, like I said, doesn't mean it's not fun to put in all that stuff.
Right.
Sometimes it's super obscure, sometimes it's just natural.
Speaking of action figures, we have a question later on about action figures, a little fun question. But when I got to that part and I saw that you had inserted the Cap 2 into the novel, I think I pinged you and was like, I can't believe you did this. And you said, and I'm going to hold you to this. You said next time you're going to put in the INT4. So yes. I'm looking forward to that if you can get that in there somewhere.
It's funny. I think the INT4 is in a comic.
Oh, is it really?
Yeah. So
I
like,
haven't looked.
unfortunately, I'm not the first one to do it, but let me look through the mini rig
Yeah.
and see what I can find.
Those mini rigs were just like, to your point, like I remember getting those, but only because everything else was sold out, and it was the only thing left on that for mom and dad to pick for Christmas. And they're like, "Oh, this is says Star Wars on it. I'm just going to buy it." And I get it and open it and thinking, "What the heck is this? I've never even seen this in the movie, right?" It was
But it's kind
never.
of like, yeah, but they're like one, they fit one figure, and there's this one that was like a big, not big, tiny,
Yeah,
it was like a two-wheeled roller thing, and the legs they're on springs. So you could actually drop it down, and the wheels would go out like that. No, I didn't know they were.
It had a little cannon on the front, I think, too, right?
Yeah, and like so apparently that's a Hoth vehicle of some sort. Yeah,
When everything
sure.
else was on legs, we had this one rolling vehicle that wasn't even around.
wheels. Let's just bring them in. I want to go back to something you mentioned earlier. You said that this was kind of, you equated Shadow of the Sith as kind of being episode 6.5, but do you see it more as a sequel to the original trilogy, or is it more of a prequel to the sequel trilogy?
So I think it's both, and what I mean by that is it's really the first opportunity that we've had to properly link the original trilogy and the sequel trilogy. Now, there's been a few comics and there's Bloodlines, other things, but really that mix of characters, original trilogy characters, more so than we get in the sequel trilogy. Obviously, there's Luke and all that, but kind of the characters that we know from the original trilogy. In the middle of this, as I said, this kind of, it's not wilderness period, but this big open space between the trilogies was really cool. So I was aware of that. It's like, yeah, let's do a sequel story that's like the original trilogy, if it makes sense. So it's like I don't like it's not a sequel to the original trilogy, but it is. It's not a prequel to the Rise of Skywalker, but it is. And of course, as it happened as I was doing the book, like it turns out that really it kind of lays a lot of stuff down for the whole sequel trilogy. So I actually watched the sequel trilogy through last week, which is the first time like back to back since the book came out. Since I wrote the book, and like things kind of hit differently now.
Yeah.
Which is really, people kind of said that to me, like, oh yeah, it kind of changes. But like I was like, wow, this actually feels different.
Did you look at the TV and like, wow, I'm a genius?
But like, I didn't.
You did. Well, it's okay.
But things like, even right from the beginning of The Force Awakens, the First Order goes to Jakku to get the map that shows where Luke is, and of course it's Lor San Tekka. Now, Lor San Tekka, he knew Ben when it was at Luke's temple. So right from the first scene, their exchange is suddenly different because I know they kind of have more adventures in
the comic,
Rise of Kylo Ren comic, but like they knew each other, and Lore knew Luke. It's just, and then when I get to Rise of Skywalker and you see Dathan and Boromir, it's like I didn't create them because they already existed, but they didn't have names or anything.
Yeah, you gave them life, right?
Yeah, so it's a weird feeling, but it was really kind of cool. I mean, I'm a Star Wars fan, so I'm like, I get to do things.
Yeah, especially when it's something meaningful, right? That's a pretty unique opportunity.
Well, this is the thing, and again, just I mean, I'm not gonna say it's luck, but just the way where the story was set and what the story had to do to link between the original trilogy and the sequel trilogy means we could do stuff. We could like develop characters more so than you sometimes are able to do, which is huge.
Yeah.
So earlier you had mentioned that the original drafts or the early drafts were considerably longer than what we ended up with. Were there any notable or interesting things that you had to trim back or slim down or cut out entirely that you would be able to share with us?
Yeah, I don't think so because actually, because I was looking today, because you mentioned that before, and I think the final manuscript is actually longer than the original. So I added stuff. I mean, the book is longer than it was intended to be, and that in a way that was quite good because they were like, just go and tell the story that you want to tell, and like don't worry about it.
Yeah.
If it has to be long, it has to be long. So that means I could really just keep everything in. There was no like cutting for length. Just kind of like it's like the worst kind of editing. Like I have written books where I've cut half of the book because like it didn't work or it didn't fit or like it needed to be something else, and that's fine. That's just a creative process. But like cutting for length is kind of annoying because you're just getting rid of stuff that should be there. So I was lucky that they could just say do the story. Yeah, and like it's long. So when it was due, like 2 weeks before, I emailed my editor and I was like, just to warn you, this book is longer than you're expecting. I apologize, but like it's just what happened.
Did anybody blink an eye?
I think, well, yeah, because then they're like, oh, okay, this is actually quite long. Right. But again, they said like it works. If it works, it's fine. If it didn't work, I mean, I'm not precious about it. Like totally cut it down to what it should be. But
well, there's not a lot of fluff in there either. Because like you said, everything that you tell really has some sort of meaning in a very particular way throughout the story. So I couldn't imagine much being trimmed from what you ended up with, and it still having that same impact on it.
Yeah, that worked.
So one of our favorite books here is the 1997 annotated scripts by Laurent Bezeroux. I'm sure you're familiar with them because in '97 there wasn't a lot of Star Wars stuff out, and we were grasping at anything. But it kind of shows that creative process, and Lucas went through many iterations with the characters. He was constantly changing names and backgrounds and whatever else in there. But I guess as you were in the creative process with Shadow of the Sith, were there any characters that you'd originally had an idea for that you loved, but ultimately had to change for one reason or another?
It's funny. The only character that really changed was Zargo and Examander, who is Regent Captain of Nightside, who has an encounter with the family. He had a different name, and he kind of turned into this like anti-Lando. Like if you can imagine if Lando was super successful and rich, but had no taste and also no morals. Because like Lando's a good guy, right?
Yeah.
So what if you just like stripped out the good qualities of Lando? What were you left with? And I think you're left with Zargo and Examander. I can't remember his original name, but he was probably the one thing that changed. I think Comat's a character I've had for a while. She was going to be in something else, which we can't talk about.
Okay.
So, but I like loved her so much that I kept her and transferred her to this. So she was less formal. She's not really formal, but there's a way about her which is like very like particular. But I realized that
she's very proper in a lot of ways. Yeah.
Yeah, and for that kind of character to go through her life where she was like not Sith, not dark side, but acolytes of beyond, and to kind of come back from that, but then to realize what she's done and then kind of exile herself. She had to be a particular kind of character, kind of person that would do that. So I think she changed a bit. But that's the kind of things that you discover when you're writing. You can have all the stuff in the outline, and then stuff will happen naturally that you then have to kind of make adjustments. But like that's just writing. For me, that's what happens.
Yeah, Zaga's use of gold everywhere was where I felt like, okay,
he's like
a little tasteless here.
And there's that thing about like how he likes like his hobby is collecting money because it means that the more that he has, the less somebody else has.
Yeah,
which is like what a evil
jerk face.
Yeah, basically.
Well, I'm looking forward to Comat too, honestly, because I think she was a breakout character for a lot of reasons, and I think there's a lot of story there before and after that I'm excited to hear about. So no pressure, but when you get around to it.
Well, it's funny because like someone was saying the other day, like, okay, so we've got the Rise of Skywalker, which is Lando says to Rey, "Oh, me and Luke, we were chasing Ochi Bestoon," and then in Shadow of the Sith, quite sort of unintentionally, it's like when Luke and Lando go to visit Comat, and Luke's like, "Oh yeah, we've met before, and I purified her lightsabers." It's just like, that's a whole thing.
No big deal.
Yeah.
I'm excited to hear that one, actually. That might be really exciting. So while we're peering kind of behind the curtain a little bit, we're huge fans of the audiobooks. Thanks to Del Rey and Penguin Random House, by the way, who help us out with a lot of that. But I've always been curious is the author involved when it comes to the performance of the audiobook with William Demerit did this one, and of course Mark Thompson and others are staples in the Star Wars community. But is there any involvement that you have with that as a consultant or any kind of participation in that?
No, there isn't, which I think is fine because you can imagine a situation where suddenly the author becomes very picky about things.
Sure.
Which would just like give everybody a headache, especially because the Star Wars audiobooks are amazing because it's a whole production of music and sound effects and like really like way beyond an audiobook normally is, which is great. That's why they are so popular.
The reason why I ask is because there's always this slight inconsistency sometimes with pronunciations of names. And so the most recent one is Marcion versus Markion with Charles Soule.
Yeah,
and even after it was corrected, again, like you said, the books are such productions that it takes a very long time, and they're under a very tight window to put these things out.
And also, I think to remember that they're also the creative creation. They're the creative output of another team who want to do their own thing. Like, they're not just someone reading the book. Like, it's almost like there's a producer, there's a director, they're a production. They're almost like a sort of narrative drama sort of thing. So they want to do their thing and not be kind of beholden to other people, which is fine. When you then listen to it back as the author, there's full of surprises, which are really cool. It's like when you do like doing that the IDW Star Wars Adventures. It's like, well, I've written comics before, and I wrote for the Shield for Archie Comics, and it's that thing you see. You write a script, and you can imagine what you think it's going to be in your head, and then you get the art back, and like it's completely separate to anything that you've ever thought of or imagined. But it's amazing because it's somebody else interpreting your script and producing this amazing artwork. So it's almost the same kind of thing. It's like, well, here's my book. What's the audiobook going to be like? And of course, knowing what Star Wars audiobooks are like, I was really excited to find out. Like, what are the voices going to be? What are the sound effects? Like, there's droids and spaceships and battles and music. What music are they going to use?
Yep.
So I think it's nice to not be involved in a way. To kind of have that as a separate thing for people. A lot of people will like read the book and listen to the audiobook because they're two different ways to experience the story. Right.
Well, and it's just funny, Albert and I talk about this often, where he'll read the book because he's an avid reader and churns through it really fast, and then when the audiobook comes out, he struggles with it because it's a little disorienting at times too. That's not who I had in my head.
I joke about the voices in my head are now different, and that's not a good thing sometimes for me. And you didn't write a Wookiee, so you played it safe. You didn't have to worry about anybody trying to speak Sherwook, which is always daunting for Mark Thompson at times. I love that guy though. So I want to talk about Luke Skywalker because as a kid growing up, I'm sure you're in the same boat. This was our character, right? Luke Skywalker was the iconic Jedi. And he almost has like this Superman effect or the Superman parallel that Yoda has as well. When a writer gets behind pen and paper and tries to put some story together, and you've got this super powerful character challenging that character in realistic ways without them just kind of blowing through everything, which they're all capable of doing, has to be either exciting and daunting at the same time, in my opinion. But what was it like to actually be able to have the opportunity to write a character that you grew up with? I mean, literally grew up with your entire life.
There's such a huge responsibility for exactly that reason. It's like, this is a character that people have known and loved for 40 years and know Luke Skywalker better than they know some people in real life, probably. And myself included, I'm sure. Thing with Luke Skywalker, like you mentioned, it's interesting, the Superman comparison. It's like, Luke Skywalker at this point is like the most powerful person in the galaxy. So that means surely that he could just do anything. But it's the kind of Superman thing. Like, well, Superman is super powerful. And people say, well, Superman's very boring because, like, what can you do? He's invincible. But like Superman knows he's Superman, and Luke Skywalker knows he's Luke Skywalker. So it became very clear, developing the story, that like Luke is aware of his power because he's sort of like a self-trained Jedi, really. I mean, obviously we've got Yoda and things in the original trilogy, but at this point, he's rebuilt his temple, or the temple. He's rebuilding the Jedi Order, training the next generation. But also, this is like not his own experience. Like, he was never a youngling in the temple and all that kind of thing. So this is, he's sort of coming from scratch from his own research with the kind of the sacred texts and things like that. So he knows his own power. So when I was writing and this is the thing, is like I had the outline, but then when it came to writing the book, it became clear that he was more powerful than I had thought, because in every situation, like, he could just use the Force and blow things away and like use his lightsaber, and he could have it very easy. But of course, that's not necessarily the right path to choose. So he knows he's got like the ultimate first-hand experience of what the dark side is and what, ultimate power and absolute power can do.
Yeah.
So he's always, throughout the book and everything that he does, he's making this judgment call about what he could do and what he should do, because he's aware of that, and he even says to himself at one point, it's like, every action is one step closer to the light. It's like, what is the right thing to do and how to do it? So kind of like, if I borrow from Marvel Universe, it's like, with great power comes great responsibility. That's like his thing. He's got this amazing self-awareness and is trying to choose the right path. So yeah, he doesn't just blow things away, because like if you take the easy route, that's like that cannot be the right route all the time, and he knows that. So like it's not like a cop out or anything, or it doesn't make it easier or harder. It's just that is his character, as if that is Superman's character. Superman is one of my favorite DC characters because he's so powerful, and he knows he's so powerful. He's a god on Earth, effectively. That makes him really interesting because he's deciding, his character is decision and judgment and of himself and what he can do and what he should do. And it's kind of the same with Luke.
Yeah.
So rather than be boring, it's actually interesting because that is your opportunity to get inside Luke's motivations and thought processes and how he views the world, because he's so powerful.
I like that self-awareness type of approach. I agree. That's what makes the characters interesting. And talking about self-awareness, Lando is in a very difficult place from the Lando that we knew in Return of the Jedi, in a very different place. And that integration with Luke, they're a bit of an odd couple because we haven't really seen them in the same scene for really anything meaningful, right? And so what was your approach to finding out, or to identifying what their bond was and maybe where it needed to go by the end of this book?
Yeah, so they're kind of weird in that they don't have that much interaction in the original trilogy. They have more in the comics and some of the books, but they've got this 20-year-old friendship. So like they're old friends, but not best friends.
Right.
I kind of looked at it like, if you work in an office and like everybody in the office and you go to social events and things and you have a great time and everyone's very nice, but then if you're at the Christmas party and like suddenly you find yourself alone with that particular person and you kind of realize that you don't really know them that well. You may have worked with them for 10 years, but like
it's like going to a family reunion.
Right. So this is kind of what it was like. It's like, well, totally they're old friends. So there's a familiarity. And Lando is the one who goes to Luke because he knows he can go to Luke. Like, this is the Sith. This is a big issue. I'll go to Luke Skywalker. And like Luke's reluctance to kind of get involved is purely based on his feelings for Lando. Like, he wants to keep his friends safe. And with this kind of darkness coming, he wants Lando to get out of there because it's too dangerous. And it's Lando's the one that's like, no, you got to listen to me. I've discovered something about the Sith, which then ties into what Luke was experiencing. So they're definitely that kind of odd couple, but they kind of complement each other because like he's aware of himself and his place in the galaxy and what it means to be a Jedi Master. And like Lando is aware of others and how the galaxy works because like he's got that experience, and especially with his daughter's been kidnapped, so that's kind of changed his character. So they're kind of like two opposites almost that come together and kind of really work off each other.
So I got a question here, because when I was reading the book, the one thing that, like, I've always said Star Wars is about family. Like, you strip away the lightsabers and the starships and the Force and everything, it really boils down to family. And the thing that I really attached to the most in this book was your depiction of Dathan, Miramir, and Rey and their relationship, right? I want to just kind of know, like, what was the thinking process behind of creating those characters? Were you drawing on personal experience, or was it just purely fictional writing? Because you've given us what we don't have a lot of in Star Wars, and we're getting more of it now, thankfully, but these really good, wholesome families that love and care about each other. More recently with like Kenobi series, where we had, Aunt Beru and Uncle Owen, their love for Luke. We saw Leia and the Organas in that one. You can bring in Hera and Kanan and their love for their kind of built family there. But there aren't a whole lot of them out there. So I just thank you for doing that first and foremost. But what was the inspiration there when you were developing the characters themselves?
So I think with Dathan and Miramir, I knew that between them there could be no secrets. That was kind of the starting point. So like Dathan obviously comes from this terrible existence on Exegol as the genetic strandcast of the Emperor, and like he knows that, and he almost feels guilty about his own existence and what that kind of means. But with Miramir, there can be no secrets between them, so she knows exactly who he is and where he came from and what he wants to do and what he's trying to do. And they're working together to save Rey from this, horrible end that is coming.
Yeah.
It was really, I don't know, it just kind of, it's not really based on anything, but it was obvious that they love each other and love kind of transcends all. When you're up against the sheer darkness of the Sith, like we're dark, so we're talking like this is the worst.
Yeah.
With the Sith Eternal. It's almost like it's worse than the Sith itself, because like when you have a whole kind of almost, I don't know if it is, but like it's almost a civilization based on the worship of the Sith. Like they're like true believers in the Sith, which is even worse than the Sith themselves, because you kind of get that extremist fanaticism, which is exactly why the Emperor kind of reactivates Ochi as the one to go after them, because like Ochi is obsessed with Exegol. So if a villain is obsessed with something, that is like the worst kind of danger. And you're right in that, okay, but there's quite a few kind of broken families in Star Wars and tragic families where one or the other is lost, and it's like, I don't know if you call it a Greek tragedy, but like it's like a kind of that mythic storytelling sort of tragedy that is used to drive story. So I wanted a loving family that drives the story. So you kind of, even though you know what's going to happen at the end, you're really rooting for them to succeed somehow.
Yeah.
If only they could get away. Maybe they will, because we know the end is coming, which makes it even sadder that you know what's going to happen, because they don't know. It's like when I say, it's like this whole thing of like, well, what's the point? Because we know what's going to happen. It's like they don't know they're in Star Wars, and Luke Skywalker does not know he's the main character in Star Wars. They don't know what's happening. So even if we do, that kind of doesn't matter. Their journey with Dathan and Miramir is kind of real, and they're doing their best. So when the end does come, it's like it's terrible.
Well, especially when they thought they had turned it around, and then only for the bottom to fall out. They finally had things going their way, and then the bottom completely fell out.
Yeah, because they keep thinking to themselves, if we make a mistake, that's it. We've had it. Like we've got to be on it. And like when the end comes, it's quite sudden, and like it's not even a mistake. Like it's not even, they didn't do it. Yeah, they were tracked. So it's all Pride's fault. If Pride wasn't involved, he's the one. He killed Rey's parents.
Man, that guy. We got a question. We'll come back to him in a little bit, because I got a question for you on him. But going back to just to Dathan really quickly, was that the decision for his background, was that predetermined in The Rise of Skywalker? I know he was mentioned in the novelization. Was there any insight there, or was that something you came up with on your own?
It's funny. I have the feeling that I came up with it on my own, but at the same time, it feels like it came from somewhere else. But he grew up on Exegol. Maybe we knew that. I don't know if we knew that, but I did make it clear that like he's like naturally aged. He's not like a clone with accelerated. He's not really a clone. He's a different thing. And in fact, that's a point in the book where Dargo's droids analyze his biodata and they discover what he is. Because also that it was like it led to this exploration of like, well, what is it like as a child on Exegol? Like Exegol is like the worst place you could imagine. How could you even grow up there? I didn't even know how the Sith Eternal lived there, because it looks terrible.
Right.
So imagine being a child growing up. So of course he then was helped by one of the sort of enslaved of the Sith Eternal, which again becomes a whole story of its own, which we get a little bit of in that kind of flashback, or his dream memory.
And thematically, it ties in with free will versus destiny, which is something that's explored quite a bit in Star Wars tales, right? You can think of a number of characters that are challenged, and most recently with Reva and her background, and deciding that I've got a new fresh start here. I'm going to break away from this. So I think you did a really good job, honestly, with giving us that backstory, setting some things up, hopefully as well, and bringing life to Dathan, who was just kind of a throwaway character for me. Even in the novelization, I think that was the first part of it where I think I started to gain interest in it. But yeah, you've done a whole different job here, so thank you.
Oh, no, thank you. I'm glad. Yeah, I mean, those two characters, I kind of love them a lot, and it's a shame, like they're dead. It's like, well, what can you do?
Yeah,
there's no sequel there.
Yeah, like that's it. But I like, creating, Miramir and her, the planet Hypercarn where she comes from, which is kind of magical and Twilight Forest. It's a kind of almost like a fairy tale thing, except they repair droids in the middle of the forest, a little cottage, their grandmother. But it was nice to be able to do.
All right, we've had enough of the lovey-dovey stuff. So now let's move over to Exum Panchard, who is this incredibly wonderful, sadistic antagonist in the book that's behind the scenes, the shadow with Kaiser, right?
Yeah.
It was really interesting how his goals really mirror Palpatine's in a lot of different ways, and maybe for different purposes. But was there any question or flirtation with maybe having those characters intersect? I know the Emperor or Palpatine's not really present yet, but was there any thought of how those characters might overlap or intertwine or intersect throughout the stories you were writing it?
I think I viewed Exum Panchard as really being a separate thing because what I wanted to do was have this concept of ancient evil, like going way beyond the history of the Sith and the Jedi that we know already. Something that is, I mean, even like, okay, ultimately, if it all culminates in Darth Sidious, because like in The Rise of Skywalker, where he's like saying, I am all the Sith, that's like the ultimate culmination of their evilness. So in a way, there is obviously a relationship because it all leads to Darth Sidious. Right. But the fact that Exum Panchard was this kind of echo of evil from aeons ago,
I like that
was really,
echo of evil.
Yeah, it was really fascinating that we know the Skywalker saga and the galaxy far, far away from, if you look at like from the High Republic, which is what, 200 years before, to the Rise of Skywalker. That is, okay, 250 years or something?
Yeah, around, yeah, we'll give it a take.
Yeah, but like, what is like, okay, and I know we've got the Old Republic, and I know the legends went into like 20,000 years before and all this kind of stuff, but in canon, it's like, let's give hints about something perhaps bigger than Palpatine. Ultimately knowing, though, that perhaps Palpatine is, like, if he is all the Sith, he says, is the culmination of that kind of power, then maybe there is a relationship.
I like how the Sith Blade parallels with that and really still encompasses that ancient evil. There's so much to it, but it's difficult to even grasp what all is actually part of this, this particular ancient Sith artifact.
Yeah, because the thing about the Sith is that it really lets you go into kind of weird, dark fantasy stuff. Like Star Wars, if it's like science fiction or science fantasy, I mean, it's spaceships and blasters and stormtroopers and stuff, but it's also got, obviously, the kind of fantastical quality. And the Sith are so kind of weird with rituals and arcane knowledge and
not really explored in a ton of detail in canon, right?
Yeah. And the idea that they're actually bigger than you think, because if you think, okay, well, it's just the rule of two and there's the master and the apprentice, it's like, well, Palpatine took over the whole galaxy and there's only two of them. And then it turns out, oh, they're all dead with one. They're building an entire fleet out of Exegol. They're way bigger than you think because they operate kind of behind the curtain. Yeah. And the idea that Exum Panchard, who is echoing from an earlier time, is like part of that kind of almost like a cosmic background radiation of Sith that exists, which therefore means it's a constant danger. Like Luke is involved in the story because he senses this massive disturbance in the Force, this shadow that is coming from the past, rippling the Force, and he's the last Jedi, so he's kind of really feeling it. I kind of like that weird horror almost of the Sith, and Exum Panchard is the greatest. Yeah, he's a ghost in a mask.
Mm-hmm. Well, and speaking of weird horrors, can we talk about Steadfast now? So this was like a surprise cameo. First off, was not expecting to see his name come up. I remember getting giddy, and I was about to text Jonesy. He hadn't read it yet, but I was going to text him and kind of spoil this part of it because you were able to raise Pride's levels of attitude to new heights that Richard E. Grant kind of picks up by the time we get to Rise of the Skywalker. So
I just kept picturing him with a flask the entire book.
Like, oh my gosh! Like and now I want more. Like, give me a limited 6-issue series on just him, making comments and drinking from a flask the entire time. Demeaning all these poor other people that are around him. These lowlifes and these that. But what was that like to write him? Because it sounds like he had a lot of fun.
Yeah, so he is probably my favorite character in the book. And Well, and he's in it for 2 chapters.
I know.
And actually, people go, "Oh, why is he in the book?" It's like, well, there is a reason because, like I said, he's basically responsible for race parents being found because the corporate sector authority who he's working for put the tracker on the ship. Spoiler. So he, like, I love Richard E. Grant, and in the Rise of Skywalker, there's 2 things. The first is there's the weirdness where, like, this guy appears, Allegiant General, and like he's in charge, but we haven't seen him in the previous movies.
Yeah.
So he was clearly doing something. So he's been there for a long time because obviously he's very senior. You know, he outranks Hux. So that's the first thing. And then the second thing is, like, Richard E. Grant is amazing. And you can imagine if you take Pride from the Rise of Skywalker, he's proper and calm and formal and British.
British.
Well, but there's something else. Like, you can imagine him as a younger man, like being like one of those kind of people, which is kind of what I did in his chapters. Richard E. Grant's first film is called With Nail and I, which is he plays a failed actor trying to get a job, and he's with Nail, and I is Paul McGann, who played the Eighth Doctor, and he's the kind of sensible. They're both out of work actors, and he's like, Richard E. Grant is always on the edge, and he's got this big coat, and he's drinking, and he talks about needing umbrication because they haven't got any money. It's like London in the '60s.
Yeah.
So in a way, everyone should watch it because in a way, those chapters of Shadow of the Sith are my With Nail and I fan fiction, because basically he's straight out of the movie. Not because I love With Nail and I, which I do, but because it was so obvious to me that Pride was like that as a younger man.
Yep.
Like total Imperial officer. Like what's the ultimate boy. Imperial officer? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah. Like he's gonna make a great coat out of Ewok for the whole family. The best coat he's but like not the Ewoks don't matter. It's the best coat he's ever had. It's like the tailoring is so fine and the fur is so exquisite.
Yeah.
You know, because he's like just really evil.
Yeah.
He's evil in the kind of non-Star Wars-y, non-Sith-y, mystical way. He's just bad.
He's just bad. Yep.
Like, yeah. But it's kind of fun because then, like, he hates Ochi, clearly. Like, really just, like, what can you imagine? Like, Ochi, the kind of character that Ochi is.
Ochi is a very hateable character.
Oh, well, yeah. Yeah, and so when you put him up against Pride, it's like there's going to be, like, a difference.
All right, so I want to make sure we have lots of time for speed round. So maybe one last question here. So 40th anniversary of Return of the Jedi is coming. Any chance we're going to see your name in the list of authors from a certain point of view again? And if that's an opportunity, you know, what kind of story would you want to tell, given that you've done Imperial personnel already?
Yeah, it's funny because both the ones I've done have been Imperial. I don't know if I need to keep going with the theme or change it up.
How old was Pride during Return of the Jedi? Can you get that story in there somehow? I'm kidding. No,
it would have been like a cadet or something.
No, because he would be the right age.
Yeah, you could stick him in there.
Ooh.
No charge.
Ooh.
That one's on me, bud.
Because he was on this. His ship was steadfast.
Hey, you could pick any one of those people in the book or in the movies and just figure out a way to kind of work them in there. So
that's the fun of those books, though. It's like pick someone and do it.
Oh, those books are so great. So many good stories.
The one that DJO did, I still just can't get over. The Stormtrooper,
You watch the movies and they're different again. It's like you then start to see things in a different way, which is kind of fun.
Okay, well, we got a few minutes left, and we're going to do something which we call the Force Lightning round. So I've got a list of questions here that I'm going to ask you. Now, some of these questions are really meant for just very quick, off-the-cuff kind of answers. We don't need to get into the details. Certainly, if you want to elaborate, that's up to you. But this is a way for us to kind of really get a gauge on your Star Wars likability. And I want to talk about, like, there's one question in here. When we get to the action figures, I am going to ask Jonesy and myself to kind of give us our picks. And you, if you've seen the questions, you know what I'm talking about. All right. Okay, so here we go. First question. Favorite Star Wars movie?
Phantom Menace.
Ooh, favorite Star Wars novel?
Mike Stackpole's first X-Wing 1 Rogue Squadron.
Yep. All right. Favorite Star Wars character not a Jedi or Sith?
Han Solo.
Favorite Jedi? There is a right answer here.
Mace Windu.
Mace Windu. That's not the right answer, but favorite. I'm kidding. Favorite Sith?
Vader.
Yeah. I figured as much. You tweeted something just the other day about characters. I saw that, and I was like, oh, okay, I know the answer to this one. Okay, so what color of Kyber crystal would call to you? You're out there in Ilum. What color is gonna?
I'm gonna say orange.
Okay, going with some Old Republic kind of colors.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you could fly any starship into battle, which would you choose?
The Ghost.
Yes, that's great. That's the right answer. If you could have a pint with any Star Wars character, who would it be?
Lando.
He'd bring the good stuff.
Yeah, he would bring the good stuff. Yeah, he'd probably drink you under the table too.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Favorite Mandalorian, and yes, this is we're going to consider Fett as a Mandalorian for the purpose of this question.
Bo-Katan.
Bo-Katan. In a fight over Lando, who wins? KB-68 or L337?
Oh, KB-68.
Yeah, I figured you'd say that.
Instantly.
Okay. All right.
Slice them with the,
yeah, saber and she's done. All right. So this is the big question. It's not the last question, but the big one. So you, Jonesy, and myself are about to throw down with our Star Wars action figures circa 1984. Okay. You get to pick 3 figures from the collection for your battle. Who are the 3 that you're going to pick? And we'll let you pick first since you're the host. And then Jonesy, you can pick the next 3.
Okay. So Gamorrean Guard. Zucus, which of course we know is Forlom, but they mislabeled the packaging, so it's Zucus.
Still confusing to this day.
Yeah, absolutely. And the third one. It's boring if I say Bosk. He was my favorite action figure, but that's super boring because I've already chosen Zucus. Oh, Boosh. Boosh. Yeah. I love that figure.
Okay. Jonesy?
So my 3 growing up, they were going to be Luke in the Dagobah fatigues, as typical as that one kind of sounds. The AT-AT driver, oddly enough, for whatever reason, I think
it was a great design.
It's the only stormtrooper I could have, and it was the AT-AT driver because you could never find the other ones. Right. And then the last one would be Jabba because he was just so big and squashed everybody.
Does that count as an action figure? That's like a.
He's almost like a playset all on his own.
Playset, yeah. I'm gonna pick the Death Star then.
And he had the whole dais and everything.
Yeah.
Hey, the Death Star's a character. Don't give me any crap.
I'm going Death Star, Hoth battle set, and no, I'm kidding. Okay, so my 3, I'm going to pick IG-88 because he was just so different looking, first and foremost, and he's now a badass. We know he is. I'm going to go Darth Vader. I hate to say be traditionalist, but he was such a cool character as well. And then the other one I really liked was the Sand Person. Like there was just something about his figure and then having that little gaffy stick.
Yeah.
And I didn't say the obligatory Boba Fett or Bosk, which I think were all probably like honorable mentions for me as well, but I asked this question because I remember growing up and with my friends, and we would do this. We would lay them all out and say, okay, everybody pick one, and then we would go out and have these different battles. And of course, I always won in my head, but that was the point of it. So good picks all around. Okay, back to the questions. Who is the better non-force sensitive pilot? This is very controversial. Han Solo or Poe Dameron?
Han Solo.
Okay, I'm still convinced Poe is force sensitive. By the way,
I know you are. That's another episode. Uncivilized blaster or ancient lightsaber for you?
Lightsaber.
Good call. What's your favorite comic book story or arc?
That's super hard.
Yeah. There's only a few to choose from over the last 40 years.
Yeah, 40 years.
Yeah. No, I'm gonna like controversial choice. I'm gonna go for the 1978 Los Angeles Times newspaper strips.
Yeah,
because they're fun.
Archie Goodwin, or is it Archie Goodwin that did those? Oh yeah,
which is a collection.
Oh, look at that.
Oh wow, he's holding it up right now.
They're really, they're really cool. They're just fun. Like this is written when Star Wars was one movie and they had no idea what was going on. So that's just kind of crazy.
The universe was their oyster to develop and to tell stories for them. So
yeah,
and the colorful costumes are just a bonus.
Yeah, the disco inspired costumes are a bonus. Who shot first?
Han.
Good answer. Who gives off the bigger creeper vibe, Jabba the Hutt or Maz Kanata?
Oh, Maz Kanata.
Thank you, sir.
No,
Thank
it's none of the above. It's Bib Fortuna.
Well, yeah, Bib's pretty creepy too.
Yeah.
All right. Another controversial question. What's your favorite lightsaber battle in Star Wars?
Oh, well, it is now Reva versus Vader from Obi Wan Kenobi.
That's cool.
That was really good. Like the way he doesn't even use a saber most of the time.
Oh yeah.
Like using the force on a duel. Like it's so obvious. Of course I would.
If you could have any droid as your co-pilot, who would it be?
I got 2 answers. So R2-D2 because he takes care of business, and KB-68 because she is no nonsense.
Yep. Everybody needs an enforcer droid with you.
Yeah.
At all times. Okay. Who uttered, and I shamelessly put this in there because Jonesy and I have been going back and forth on this. But in the Kenobi series, who utters the line, "I am not your failure, Obi Wan. You didn't kill Anakin Skywalker"? Was that Anakin Skywalker speaking, or was that Darth Vader speaking?
Vader.
All right, we're going to end the show right here. Thanks, everybody.
I am accumulating a list of people on my side.
You're not helping
You're not
Adam.
very well.
You're not helping Adam. All right.
Thank you, Adam. You're the best.
Anakin's dead. Vader killed him.
He's gone. Okay,
Yeah.
well, you're wrong, but okay. All right, last question. If you could pick a side.
This is why no one comes back to our show.
Right, yeah. It's like I just tell you what's right and wrong and we'll be fine. If you could pick a side, which would you pick? Would you pick the light side or the dark side?
Dark side. It would be a mistake, but I would pick the dark
okay.
side.
Well, at least you're self-aware. So,
like, you know what's happening, what's going to happen. Yeah, it's not going to end well.
Yeah.
Hey, redemption's just around the corner, though, probably.
Exactly,
so.
yeah.
And then you die. Yeah.
Yeah, fun ride. And you die, get redeemed, come back as Force Ghost. It's all fun. It's all good.
Yeah, it's all good.
Awesome. Thank you, Adam, for playing our Force Lightning Round questions. That was a lot of fun.
That was fun.
Pretty good overall. I'm going to grade you later. I'll send you the results.
Thank you very much.
No, thank you, sir.
You're an A+ in my book.
I bet. Hey, I know you're going to be out in San Diego Comic-Con next week, but what's next for you? How can people find you? How can people follow you on social media if they want to know more?
So I'm on Twitter as Ghost Finder, which is now Star Wars canon. You can look it up on Wikipedia.
Yeah.
Which also means I can never change it. So that's fine.
You are stuck.
I am stuck with Ghost Finder. And then Instagram is Adam Christopher Writer, and my website is adamchristopher.me. But yeah, people can mostly find me on Twitter, where I spend way too much time.
I've been curious about that. I see so many writers on Twitter all the time. I'm like, where do you find time to write? Because
But this is a question that many of us ask ourselves.
Yep.
The answer is a secret. It's a trade secret.
Yeah. It's funny because, like, at the moment on Twitter, because of Shadow of the Sith, I kind of spend my days trolling people with Killing Eve gifts.
I saw those.
Yeah. Jodie Comer played Boromir in Rise of Skywalker, and she's the main character and main star of Killing Eve. And there's a GIF for every single possible situation from that show. So I have great fun. Well, too much fun.
You're relentless is the word I would use. But yeah, good work there. You're doing the Lord's work for sure.
Well, I try.
So Adam, thanks for dropping by to spend some time with us today and get to know you a little bit better and talk about, of course, Shadow of the Sith, which is out now. Please go pick up the book, both in novel and audiobook when you get a chance. That's going to do it for us here on the Cantina Cast. And so thank you, Jonesy, for being here, of course. Thank you, Adam.
Thank you, sir. Yep.
And thank you to our listeners for all your support, and may the Force be with you.
You're still listening? Wow, that's amazing. Well, I'm here to give you the disclaimer. Normally we do a big, long, drawn-out disclaimer thing saying what's what and who's what and all that other stuff, but I think you guys kind of know that Lucasfilm and Disney have no affiliation with us at all, and we have none with them. We talk about Star Wars, which is their property, and all that other good, fun stuff, but I think you can tell which is our stuff and which is their stuff. If you can't, well, then send a lawyer to send an email to me, and I'll be glad to chat with them. Other than that, you know what's what, so that's your disclaimer.